Welcome back, everybody, to the You Ask We podcast, the show where you ask the questions, they answer them, and I'm just a guy in the middle. And this week we have an awesome guest. He's the co-founder of an up-and-coming streetwear brand called NoGuidance NYC, which was born in South Africa but based in New York. I want to give a warm welcome to my good friend Thomas Stenz. Thomas, how's it going?
How are you, Eden? Thanks so much for having me, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Yeah, you know how this works. Pretty much all the questions come from the people, but the first question comes from me, and that's what's new? What's going on?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's really good to see you, man. It's been a while since we last caught up.
Yeah.
Um, what's going on is we are onboarding a creative director, which is pretty exciting. So once that's over the line, then we're hoping to propel a couple of our collaborations, and really kind of build off some of the momentum that we built thus far. So that's kind of where most of the team's energy is going and flowing. Um, so it should be pretty exciting, all going well.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. It's like you guys are growing like so quickly before our eyes. It's amazing. Yeah, let's get into some of these questions. This first one comes from Jake. He wants to know what was the inspiration behind the No Guidance brand?
Yeah, you know, we um we were always inspired by how an artist externalizes what's valuable or worth expressing in their opinion. So, an artist has a message that they want to share or some sort of visceral feeling that they want to express, and they turn to art to do that. They create something out of nothing, and so we thought, wow, well, what's valuable to us is mutual benefit and being like impactful. And so from there, we looked at what the most impactful avenue is. We thought in New York City, and that's streetwear and that's art. Um, we turn to like in our research, we turn to Theodore Roosevelt. Funnily enough, he's got a phrase or a quote. He goes, "Do what you can with where you are with what you have." And we think that's an inspiration and like a mantra that's used by artists, that's used by business people. And so bearing that all in mind, we had the inspiration. We're in New York City. We had what we think is the most impactful avenue to achieve value and holistic impact. That obviously compounded with the art and gallery scene here created this incredible opportunity to work with artists, give them streetwear as a canvas, and hopefully build something pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. And you're so right how like streetwear has such a huge effect on New York,
Yeah,
because it's like it's such a growing like market. Like everyone's like into it nowadays. I mean, it's like how did you get the South? Is the South African like inspiration for the brand? Is that like from like you guys because you guys like grew up in South Africa? Is that where
yeah.
you're
I
going?
mean, that's a great question because here I am preaching about the gospel of like art in New York City, but in the spirit of being very organic, which is really what's most important, and like that's the ethos of our brand building in general, was being organic and real. We figured, hey, we South African group of South African guys mostly, and what we know is our upbringing in South Africa, the beauty and often the underappreciation of the artists there. And so in an effort to stay true to ourselves in our upbringing, we figured it would make sense to start, or for the first drop, to be surrounded or kind of created with South African artists. We called it Origins Collection. It's more of a sort of a minimalistic approach. Our first line I'm talking about. But for sure, it's super important to us, and to the extent to which our creative director is said to be a South African artist, and it's very much within the our bones and the ethos to be South African born, but to kind of expand and celebrate the fact that art is not really bound by any. We don't think bound by any political circumstances or country divides.
It's awesome. And speaking of staying like true to yourselves, I mean, as much as like streetwear is like growing, and as much as there's like different unique streetwear brands out there, it feels like sometimes they can overlap because there's so much. So this question comes from SJ. He wants to know what differentiates yourselves from all the other streetwear brands out there.
Yeah, you know, a lot of them, as far as we were concerned, when we look at this very very saturated market, and it's really no secret that it's very saturated and it's quite hard to get a look in and to be differentiated. But a lot of the intention of the brands that we know and love, it tends to be like, you wear this and you're wearing something that's cool because we told you that it's cool, through our branding. And maybe they have a beautiful store downtown in the city, and they have a you know flipping healthy price point. It's expensive. Um, so so we hope our primary differentiating factor is the collaborative nature of the brand. That it's not to say that we are like expert designers. I mean, I candidly don't have much of a trade sense at all. It's not really my game. But what we do sort of obsessively focus on is collaboration. To what extent can we approach an artist and say, hey, you clearly have a talent. Come and design something for us, or come do an interview for us. And so I think it's through that collaboration to a mutually beneficial end that we are differentiated.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I mean, yeah, because it's like a lot of streetwear brands, it's like they focus on the fact that it looks good, but like they don't really collab with like too many like artists out there. So the fact that you guys do it is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, we're still obviously growing and emerging and adding artists to the roster all the time. It's interesting. As great as it is to be based on collaboration, you're also, the growth of the brand and the speed at which we're able to do things is really dependent on, a lot of the time, on the speed of our collaborators, as opposed to these brands that are pretty well established, that can be pretty internal and pretty mysterious in their operations. So if they want to do a collection, they can just do a collection. They have maybe internal designers, and they have manufacturers, and it's all done within the parameters of their business model. But for us, it's like, well, we have to go and approach an artist, and there's a lot of contractual obligations on both sides, so that everyone's clear. The artist understands to what extent they collaborating, and that we have like the right to use their designs, which of course is like helpful and healthy for them, but it can be fairly bureaucratic. Um, but I think very worthwhile in the end, because you want to build something properly and really collaboratively in the true sense of the word.
That's awesome. And speaking of collabing, Ofek like submitted a question like kind of joking. He was like, "Can I have some free clothes?" Um, but like in a serious question, like I'm actually curious, like speaking of collaborations, do you guys ever like sponsor any influencers? Like how does that work? Because I know a lot of brands tend to do that. I'm always curious about it.
Yeah, that's I think what we've learned is like bread and butter when it comes to growth, specifically like social media growth. Unless you have, I think, a ton of financing to create these like amazing over the top videos and then sponsor them and push them out, pay for ads. You've got to be very organic and intentional in who you approach. That's what we found. To the extent that, yes, I mean, we do a ton of outreach, and some people won't reply, some people will reply and be a little bit like skeptic. They want more understanding of what they're getting themselves into if we just send them something. And some guys are super open to it, and just sort of kind people that themselves are very organic on their page, social media pages, or in their work, whatever it is. And so those are the people we really like to work with. We say, hey man, we'd love your work, love your content, love your athletic ability, whatever it is. I'd love to see your rep. We're going to send you a package. If you wear it, great. Feel free to post. If you don't, just whatever. That's cool as well. Most of the time, we found that they're pretty keen and engaged. And so there's obviously a business element. We're not just going to like give handouts, but we're definitely open to sort of collaborations where we'll send a couple of pieces out to a recipient who we think and believe um, will really optimize it. You know, it's like, I think from a business perspective, it's a good way of optimizing the balance sheet, I think. So as opposed to adding a like an advertising expense, you can sort of just take away from inventory, and then write that off as like you can use the inventory as marketing expense. So we do, to answer Orphe's question, we do. Um, and you know, he's welcome to get in touch.
Yeah, I mean, and Ofek, if you want some free clothes, a giveaway may be cooking. So make sure to get on that. Make sure to keep up with the socials. We'll figure it out soon. Yeah, this next question comes from Michael. Um, like for in your perspective, how has the brand grown from you, like for you, over your time, like running it?
Yeah. Um, well, so we started really um, with an inspiration that we kind of spoke about earlier. I was in Europe at the time visiting my sister who lives that side, and we were walking through the streets, you know, these sort of cool niche quintessential European towns, and I really was blown away. I didn't expect this at all, but I was blown away by how much of a community that a lot of these boutique stores had built, to the extent that there were almost lines across around the block for brands that I'd never heard of, and I think a lot of people around the world hadn't heard of. But there was really something special about that sense of community, that these brands were focused on, and so our growth thesis is based on that, building a community. So we had a logo, we had a name and a vision, and you know, luckily through collaboration, hard work, a little bit of luck here and there for sure. We uh, we we popped up in downtown New York City towards the end of last year, which really went very well. We have a distribution center now in South Africa, and what I hope is a strong growing interest in the idea of merging art and artists, and streetwear in the name of holistic impact. You know, these artists, we kind of work with artists at the moment, mostly in South Africa, but also a couple in New York City that are both established and not. You know, our first artist feature was a guy called Mateo. This is actually one of his pieces, um, and he sells his art on the beaches of Cape Town. You know, so not really established, doesn't really have a much gallery opportunities, very humble beginnings. But you know, this guy is so talented, and candidly, I think if this was hanging up in a gallery in New York City, no one would really question it. So that's the way that we try and grow, collaborate, realize talent that we see, artistic talent, and try and beg the question of our community that we try and build, that, you know, why is it that there's expensive pieces of art in museums that are valued at millions and millions of dollars, when there's so much talent that kind of goes under the radar. So through being inquisitive, through collaborating, and through really focusing on a community, um, that's kind of how we've grown.
That's awesome. And yeah, I mean this next question, this next question comes from David, because the thing is, it's like I know we said like before, like how streetwear is like this big like broad market. It's becoming like huge, but they also tend to be pretty niche in regards to like each brand's specific like market. So his question is how do you guys like appeal to everybody, you know?
No, that's like sort of the $1 million question, I think, when it comes to brand building in general.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, I think the answer is that if we appeal to everybody, it's very likely that we're doing something wrong. That's to say that I think it's pretty impossible to have a strong, authentic brand, and at the same time appeal to everybody, have everybody like it. Um,
Mhm.
we did a lot of research into, you know, more of the business side of streetwear. You know, what is driving consumer demand? What generally do people look for? Again, this is not comprehensive. I don't think you can please everyone, but we found that the streetwear consumer really trusts the source of creation, and then relies on tools like social media to develop like a high level of discernment, and and further relies on like a cultural cache, um, as a proxy for status and resonance. So to answer David's question, we don't really try to appeal to everyone. We do try and focus on the cultural cache that we trying that is integral to the business, and build a community around that. The people that are responsive to the idea of taking artists from all walks of life from around the world, and giving them our streetwear as their canvas, and hopefully creating a pretty collaborative business model that way.
That's awesome. I love how you say it's like a brand that appeals to everyone is not likely to be successful, because it's like you still want to have like your own niche, because like brand loyalty is everything nowadays.
Yeah, I think especially in streetwear, people kind of always want to be, when they buying a streetwear piece, the likelihood is they're buying it because it stands out in some way and it has some level of exclusivity to it. I think a lot of the brands do that through price points, like very high price points. That's to say that if you wear, I won't name brands, but if you wear a certain brand name, you have that status of like, okay, you're doing okay, you're a wealthy person, or you have the extra money to spend on the street. But other people are driven by the creative, um, bones of a brand, where it's like, okay, this is organic material and I'm wearing organic material. So it's very almost tribal, that, and to the extent that, yeah, if unless you have tremendous amounts of money and you're more like a fast fashion house like a Zara, it's quite tough to please everybody and to brand market towards everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, now we got a few anonymous questions that people submitted. Um, the first one is who's a dream collaboration for you guys?
Dream collaboration. Yeah, I think, I don't know if you can see, you probably heard of this guy. His name is Banksy, and I'm a big fan of his. I think what he's done is very cool. Stayed mysterious, stayed kind of low key, but his artwork is very, very impactful. So he's like probably a far fetched dream, but a dream nonetheless. And another one is an artist by the name of William Kentridge. He's a South African artist. I think he was like born in the 50s, and he's kind of blown up. He's grown to be a very, very impactful and significant artist. So so those are two that come to mind. That would be that would be amazing to work with. But in the meantime, I think we're happy with working with artists that, as I mentioned, are from all walks of life, that are selling their artwork on beaches, or that are kind of fresh out of art school in New York City, and figuring it out. Those are also somewhat dream collabs, because uh, by collaborating with those people, we kind of achieving our goal as a brand, which is spotlighting underappreciated art, talented artists, and giving them a chance to shine by designing that which is very, very impactful, as we discussed earlier.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, Banksy is such an awesome dream. I support you in it because it's like he's so cool and mysterious. Like, literally, how do you even reach him?
Well, that's exactly it. So I think if you
It's crazy.
I think if brands were to collab with that guy, that's like the definitive cool status. You can't get cooler than collaborating with Banks. I remember Stormzy. I don't know if you know Stormzy, that big British
Oh,
rapper.
yeah, yeah.
He performed at Glastonbury, and Banksy made this bulletproof vest for him, and it was really, really sick. And he shouted out Banksy in one of his lyrics. It's very cool. So yeah, Banksy is like I think the gold standard when it comes to collaborations.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. This next anonymous question. How do you choose your models? Like when you're doing like photo shoots like for the brand, like with new clothes, whatever you got going on, how do you choose like who wears it? Is
Yeah,
there a process?
well, it's like a really good practical question. That I don't really have a great answer to, other than we chose models, and we invested in models proportional to what we could afford. Going back to that whole grounding ethos of do what you can where you are with what you have. So at the start, and this must have been towards the end of 2022. maybe the start of 2023. We had a couple of university guys and girls that I went to school with, and I wouldn't shout them out by name, but they were very kind enough to give up their time, and we literally went to the High Line. And at the time, we had like a um, very like rudimentary and rough draft of samples, and we spent a couple hours there just snapping shots. We had a very talented photographer who again was like very generous in his time, and so we went from there, and because that's what we could do, and luckily as we sort of developed and wanted to to invest a little bit more into marketing, which is important, into models, we sort of we went to the studio and hired a couple of models, and luckily in New York City, it's there's plenty of them. It's not too hard to find, uh, but there's no real. We're not so specific in like the kind of model that we look for. I mean, really anyone could model. It's not really our goal to to be too specific with models. It's more about the art, and hopefully the
Yeah, no,
message that it evokes.
shout out Jasper Newman. This
There
next,
you go. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, this next question. What was, in your opinion, your favorite design that you guys ever put out?
Oh, dude, yeah. Um, well, I think that the hat that I'm wearing now quite a funny story. It's. I mean, I happen to like it. I think the purple and black really pops, but this wasn't a cap that we were supposed to have at all. So our manufacturer basically sent this to me when we were doing sampling, just for sizing. I mean, we have a couple of other colors for caps, but I liked it so much. I was like, hey, can we do like 50 of these? And those are the ones that sold out really quick. So I think this is my favorite design, just because of that cool story of like kind of taking a little bit of a risk and saying, hey, let's try this color as well. Um, there is an upcoming collaboration with an artist in New York who is really cool, and I think when we implement some of his work, that'll probably become my favorite stuff. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, speaking of that, this next anonymous question, it's asking what future projects are you guys excited about? So could you spoil a little more about this project, or you're gonna keep
Yeah,
it?
well, so absolutely, a lot of it candidly is going to be kickstarted and off, on the shoulders of the creative director, who himself is a pretty established artist in South Africa. He works with some pretty big brands in South Africa and in London, in the UK. And he's going to lead or kind of take over the design reins and the collaborative reins. And so that's something that we're excited about. Uh, what I am looking forward to as well is we have a couple of artists now on the sort of New York roster. In other words, the artists from New York City, and we're going to be doing some screen printing on both onto some of the stock that we have now, and stock that we'll be sampling and testing the waters with, over the next couple of months, most likely in the build up to the summer, where people are out and about, and it's easier, and it makes more sense to do like events. And then finally, we're hoping this is going to come through, but there's like an Afrobeats DJ that's pretty popular, that we're hoping is going to rep some of our stuff and maybe work with us. Um, Alavai, I don't want to jinx it, but we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, dude. That's amazing. So yeah, the way the show works, I told you the first question always comes from me, and the last question also always comes from me. And that is, if you had to give one piece of advice to the people watching at home, what would you tell them?
Yeah, dude, it's probably hard to sum up in one piece of advice, but I'll tell you from my experience, that as much as I'm sat here like preaching the beauty of creativity and collaboration, and these things are maybe more like 30,000 feet in the air. I think the most important when you're trying to build a brand, and when like doing good business, is very important, that you really have to ground yourself. You have to kind of outline your pillars, that are gonna ground the business, and as great as creativity is, planning, strategy, is really what gets the ball rolling. What indeed materializes a dream and takes something from an idea to a real tangible, hopefully, asset.
Yeah. Hey, Thomas, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you for coming. If you guys like this episode, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you guys want to see what's going on with the show, who's coming on next, things like that, make sure to follow the socials. The links are down below. If you guys want to see what's going on with No Guidance, I highly recommend checking them out. I'm going to add their links down below as well. And with that, this has been Thomas Stenz. My name is Evan Toronto, and I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.